Hey everybody, welcome to Geeksvana Live. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon in what here in the UK, certainly down here, down south, is a very, very sweltering hot day, it has to be said. So I have the windows of the studio open, I have the fans blowing, and thankfully I think all of our audio is handling all of that extra noise pretty darn well, frankly. Thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate you all coming to see us this afternoon, this stroke early evening. Today we're going to be talking about the UK CAA releasing their consultation response on the legacy and transition period extension proposals. Now you'll remember that here on Geeksvana we brought you an interview from Jonathan and Callum from the CAA to highlight their public consultation on whether or not the UK should follow EASA and extend our drone legacy and transition periods. These are currently due to expire at the end of this year, meaning that if your drone does not carry a C label, which of course it cannot at the moment because there are no C labels, it will be relegated to the A3 category or far from people airspace, unless of course you're flying a sub 250 gram drone, which will continue indefinitely. Now today it's important to stress that there's no change in the law yet. This changes nothing. Carry on as you are, basically. However, what we now have is the CAA opinion and recommendations based on that public consultation, which via CAP 2367, one of their official publications, will now go to the Department for Transport for their consideration, essentially. It now needs to go through the government framework for the legislation to change. Obviously, government may decide to change things or go another course, etc. But of course, this is recommendations from their air regulator, so you'd hope it would carry a lot of weight. Now, I've got some views, both in terms of good and bad, about how this might affect things, but I'll go through those once we've looked at the actual release itself from the CAA. We're also going to be bringing you an interview with Callum from the CAA RPAS policy team very soon to dive even deeper into this topic and answer the questions that I have, but also I know the questions that you will have as drone users as well. So any questions that you have today in the live chat that I cannot answer will also be put onto the CAA list for that interview as well. If you're watching the replay, do comment below with your questions as well. So as I say, we'll come on to what I feel about the good and bad, as it were, in a while. I say a few minutes. It's quite a decent length of document, but we'll have a look at that. But just very quickly, thank you everybody again for joining us this evening. I really do appreciate it. Maltese Falcon, Glasgow, nice but overcast. Okay, it's one of those things with the British, isn't it? I'm always moaning if it's raining because I can't fly my drone, and then when it's a sweltering 28, 29 degrees like it is now, I'm complaining because obviously it's a little bit too hot for me. So, but yes, just need that fan cranked up. Nick Sanders, great to see you. Dyna Drone, hi. Johnny Mac 26, one of our members there, and Airless Mean as well. Yeah, really great to see such a wide crowd in. It's good to see a few new names as well, like Odd Tech Man, etc. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's have a look at this document and see what it actually says. We're going to run through the document in full so that we understand exactly what the recommendations are, and I will be making comments as we go along. So, of course, we're going to start off there with the background. So in June 2022, the CAA consulted on whether to extend the legacy and transition UAS provisions in the open category. So we all, obviously, many of us filled out these forms. The CAA believed that an extension would be likely necessary due to the UK not having in place the necessary infrastructure to move away from non-class marked UAS to class marked UAS by the 1st of Jan 2023. And that's so close now, isn't it, frankly? Namely, those obstacles are the establishment of the Market Surveillance Authority, the establishment of conformity assessment bodies, and the creation and adoption of the relevant standards. So literally the entire system needed to have C-label drones a thing, to make them a thing, isn't in place yet. So the fact that we're now in June and heading into July, the fact that this would change on the 1st of January of next year is incredible, frankly. So we would not certainly been ready. So certainly hats off for them for spotting that. The purpose of the consultation was to gauge the stakeholder support, that's you guys, for or against an extension to the legacy and transitional UAS provisions described above, and for how long, which is the interesting part as well, and to better understand the impact of making this change or not, basically. So that's the background, which I think most of us, especially people watching this video, will already be aware of. So the chapter 2 is the executive summary. So this is where we start to get a little bit more of the meat of what the responses were and that type of thing. The consultation is now closed, as we're aware. In total, the CAA received 4,506 responses. Not bad, across the 5 questions posed. The RPAS policy team, who instigated the consultation, would like to make clear that every response was individually reviewed by the CAA. And I can stress that even the individual comments, I am told every single one of those comments were reviewed and put into sections by members of the RPAS team. So everything you've basically told the CAA in that public consultation has actually gone in front of someone, which, if that's true, is very, very exciting. The following is a statistical breakdown of the responses from questions 1 to 4. So the CAA asked the first question: would you be in favour of extending the provisions for legacy category UAS in the open category? So this is where you can fly your existing legacy drones, essentially. So option 1, yes, 4,415 with 97.98% of the vote. I don't think anyone's particularly surprised with that one. We did get 1.58% of people that were against extending the provisions for legacy category, which is interesting. But yeah, as you can see there, a very much a very strong voicing from the 4,415 votes there. The CAA asked, over what additional period should the extension for legacy category be? So 12 months got just 2.33%, 24 months, 2 years, 24%, and again, a clear winner there, longer than 24 months, 70.73%, with 2% of people deciding not to answer that question. So again, that's interesting. Longer than 24 months for a legacy period for you to fly your existing drones within that area. So it should be interesting. Again, not completely surprising, I'd have to say, from the responses that I get and the messages that I get from you guys. Would you be in favour of extending the provisions for the transitional category UAS in the open category? Again, here, overwhelmingly positive in the yes, 4,357, 96.69% of people saying yes. So that's, again, absolutely fascinating. Over what additional period? And again, you would be unsurprised to know that, as per the legacy question, it's very much followed suit, with a very similar figure of 78.16% saying longer than 24 months, so 3,522. So in itself, those questions are very, very interesting, and it's clear that us as stakeholders, so this is the hobby flyers, recreational flyers, all the way through to small commercial operators, owners of large drone businesses, and of course even those people engaged in the future flight side of things, so beyond visual line of sight people that are planning for 10, 20 years down the road. The stakeholder involvement in this would have been extremely wide. So it's interesting to see such an agreement across those stakeholders, frankly. So yes, so next up, the CAA asked an additional question that provided our regulated a community an opportunity to discuss their choices in greater detail. Do you have any additional comments in relation to the proposed extension, including any impact of either extending or not extending these provisions that may have for you? So they wanted to know really how either extending or not extending would impact you, whether that's favourable or negative. In total, the CAA received 2,411 responses to this additional question. That's quite a number, I have to say, compared to the 4,500 who actually responded full stop. Each of the 2,411 response comments were read and grouped accordingly. What emerged were some common themes outlined below. So firstly, environmental impact. A significant proportion of respondents were concerned about the environmental impact of having potentially thousands of UAS, many of which are still functional, becoming e-waste at the end of the transition and legacy periods. You said at the point class marked UAS are available, the industry would see a natural retirement of legacy and transitional UAS. So that's an interesting one, isn't it? The environmental impact, because we often talk about the drones that end up on our shelves for all sorts of different reasons. And to have something fairly draconian say, okay, that's it, you can no longer use that perfectly safe and valid drone today, you can no longer use it tomorrow because these new regulations are now in effect. That would create a lot of waste, and there would be an environmental impact there for sure. Economic impact. The majority of responses focused on the economic impact of having to upgrade to class-marked UAS after investing significantly in legacy and transitional UAS. The CAA were told the current regulation, if allowed to continue, would push not only recreational but also commercial operators out of the market. So that's an interesting one, and one that I've heard countless times from viewers who are both recreational and commercial operators. We would see people leaving the industry effectively, which I think is a shame, because the new rules here in the UK for drones are currently starting to create a bit of a situation where we've got a lot of budding commercial operators coming through with their A2 COCs or sub 250 gram drones, that type of thing. And I think it would be a shame to see that side of the market fall away, frankly. So investment uncertainty. Many of you told us your business have held off purchasing much needed UAS with increased capability out of concern for their future in the open category. The uncertainty currently surrounding class-marked UAS, which is creating uncertainty within your business operations. 100%. Then this is certainly repeated across the hobby, the recreational flyers as well. People are concerned, and really from the Air 2S onwards, I started to see a lot of people, but predominantly with the Mavic 3 in the UK, saying, I'm not going to touch this drone because it needs a C label, frankly. And I think that also shows just how popular, just how popular the Mini 3 Pro has been as well, being a sub 250 gram drone. People don't want to spend 1,500, 2,000 upwards pounds on a drone that is only going to be able to be flown in the current situation, so in congested areas with their A2 COC for 6 months. So 100% there. Safety. A significant percentage of respondents made the argument against class-marked UAS in the open category, citing the low volume of incidents that currently occur between those who abide by the current regulatory regime. 100%. And again, that's a very big theme that I've experienced as well from the point of view of viewers contacting me. And also clarification of the CAA's role. A common theme in responses is the assumption that it is the CAA's power to make this decision alone. Changes to policy and regulation are made by the Department for Transport and the government. When the CAA identifies an area of policy or regulation to update, create or amend, they will submit an opinion to the Department of Transport, who will consider it. As discussed in Chapter 3, the CAA has submitted our opinion on this matter for the DFT for consideration, which we'll come on to. So very much, I think those areas that have come up under the whole, do you have additional comments regarding the proposed extensions, really do fit with a lot of the information, a lot of the feedback that I have had. Environmental impact, yes, certainly. Economic impact, 100%, certainly coupling on to investment uncertainty. And the safety side of things as well. I hear so many times from drone flyers, both commercial and recreational, how come this drone is safe today and not tomorrow just because the date has changed, essentially. So it is an interesting one. And I think that it shows they have a handle from that question and from your fantastic responses that you've given to this consultation, that they do have a handle on what people are thinking across the stakeholders, frankly, which is excellent. Okay, Chapter 3, the next steps. This is where it starts to get interesting. We need to put a little marker here for people that want to skip to this bit that already have the rest of the information. There is a clear and significant majority who favour an extension to both provisions beyond 24 months. This has been a valuable exercise for the CAA to learn why the regulated community was in favour of this. It has shaped our opinion significantly and moulded our response to the Department for Transport. To that end, the CAA have recommended to the DFT that, and I know some of you will be reading ahead of me here, all provisions should be extended indefinitely, and the class marking scheme should be re-evaluated. This will form part of a larger investigation into the current UAS open category regulatory framework and what is most suitable for the United Kingdom. Because, of course, we're no longer part of the EASA framework once we came out of Brexit. Although there was a long time there we thought we would stick within EASA, we are out of it. So although we have the adopted EU rules, we do have that freedom to be able to have rules that suit the United Kingdom. This is to ensure that any solutions suitably addresses the need of the community, as well as addresses safety and security risks in a proportional manner. Notwithstanding a re-evaluation of the class marking scheme, an extension should be indefinite, at least until the consumer can purchase class marked UAS on the open market. At that point, consideration could be given to the reintroduction of a transition period. This would ensure that the regulated community, so all of us that fly drones, has a suitable amount of time to naturally phase out older UAS, whilst at the same time having the option to purchase class marked UAS. This approach would significantly mitigate most or almost all areas of concern raised in the responses to the consultation. Details of the recommendation to government, including the policy objective, are also available on the Project Tracker website, which there will be links to this document and that link in the description below after this stream is live. So let's unpack that, shall we? What we're effectively talking about here is that the CAA, following a public consultation with you, the drone flyers of the UK, are recommending to the Department for Transport that we effectively have an extended indefinite period for both legacy and transitional periods. So effectively what that means is we would stay as we are now for an indefinite period, and only once those C-class label drones are actually on the market, freely available. So, you know, your Mavic 3 now has a C1 label on it from DJI, etc., and the Autel's Light Plus has one, etc., that type of thing. And we have our C2 and C0 to C4 marked drones openly available on the market, so openly available to consumers. Only then will we see the potential of a new legacy and transition period. So effectively what you could then see is, okay, these drones have all now been out on the market for a year, 6 months, a year. This is just me putting those dates on there, so that's just my opinion. Now we're going to have a 2-3 year, however long that legacy period is going to be and transition period is going to be, to allow the natural replacement of non-C-label drones. But during that period, we'll obviously have both of those drones operating. So people who do go ahead and invest in the new C-label drones will have the ability to use them as such, and people who have the existing drones, well, they'll still be able to use things like under the A2 CFC on their 50-meter rule, etc. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think this has the potential to be very exciting. I think that there are, of course, with any of these kind of things, there are good and bad, which we'll come on to in just a moment. But I just want to see in the chat very quickly how everybody is taking this news. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. It's great to have such a big crowd in so early in the evening. Airless Mean, one of our members, hi, Michael. At least it gives them an understanding what we, the drone community, are wanting, and they're listening. Very rare that people listen to a hobby. Haha. Yeah, absolutely. I do agree for that. Nick Sanders, key thing is any change for the minis? No. Sub 250, the indefinite side of things, nothing is changing from that point of view. Certainly not from this public consultation. So we'll still have the indefinite sub 250 gram benefits that we already enjoy now. No one's looking to take that away. Big Bear Mark, thank you very much for the $10 super chat. I hope you're well, sir. All the best to you. And yeah, thank you for that. The Maltese Falcon, I'd understand if legacy drones were falling out the sky. Time has shown that the majority of flyers are responsible. And I think that has to be part of it as well. I think that we have to, let me just switch back to this screen for a moment. I think that we have to an extent as well, we have to congratulate the UK stakeholders. So everybody from the new recreational flyer all the way through to large scale commercial drone operators. We operate very safely in this country, touch wood. And there are very, very few instances of anything happening, let alone any kind of danger to life and that type of thing. So I think we have to be congratulated from that point of view. And I also think things like Article 16, which was obviously brought in by the excellent people, Simon Dale, the excellent people over at FPV UK, who are very important in bringing the Article 16 authorization into effect, especially with getting the revisions to it as well. We have to look at that and the fact that people are using that safely, that they're doing their risk assessments, that we're not having lots of problems pop up at parks where people are using the Article 16 authorization to fly their drones. And I think when you bring all of that together, you do start to see a situation where, yes, this drone hobby, this drone industry here in the UK is thriving. We've got many more numbers than we had flying drones only a short time ago, especially the sub 250 gram things like the Mini 2s and Mini 3s, but we're doing it safely. And I'd like to think that this recommendation and that this release under this cap is actually showing that CAA are listening to that, and that the CAA are really starting to understand how the hobby and the industry works, basically. So it's, to me, I find it very, very exciting. I think it's going to be something which I think will be welcomed by most people. So it is good, as I say, because it does mean a continuation of where we are right now. Nothing effectively would change. So you can keep buying those drones. The C label we can then transition over to those slowly. But you know that if you bought a Mavic 3 today, you're probably, certainly from where we are now, I would have thought you're going to get at least a good 2 or 3 years distance there. It's also good from the point of view that we're not going to have to move the date again. So if they put it back a year, or, you know, if they do like EASA's done and actually have a set period, what if we're not ready then? You know, we didn't know if we were going to be ready by now. So what if we're not ready then? There's a lot of hurdles which came across in section 2, I think it was, section 1 of the CAA release, and those hurdles aren't always something which is exactly easy to do. And bear in mind as well, of course, that we do have the situation where the CAA are asking for a re-evaluation of the class marking system, and that it is part of a larger investigation into the current UAS open category regulatory framework and what is most suitable to the United Kingdom. So if there is a larger investigation going on about the open category, etc., what we don't want to see is obviously yet again more changes happening before we even see the C labels coming out, basically. So I think it's good that they're recommending that this is indefinite. Essentially, in my opinion, they'll be pulling all of this back behind the scenes, essentially, back behind to the regulators, to the legislators, so they can all sit down and talk about this and work out the best way to proceed, and only then come forward to you as stakeholders, as drone flyers, once we have the C labels in place to say, okay, now we need a legacy period. So yes, it does give us more of a predictable way forward, certainly. But I like to think as well, as I was just saying, it shows we are being listened to as a hobby and industry. Now, there is always the bad side of these things. I was excited for C-label drones. I would like to fly a Mavic 3 with a C1 label, with zero separation of people, etc. I don't think there's any reason, if it meets the conformity. So I would love to be able to do that now. So it's slightly frustrating that we won't be able to fly those larger drones in more places for quite a while yet, unfortunately. So A2CFC holders will be stuck where they are now with the 50 meters over 500 gram for separation, etc. And therefore there is the potential to stop the lower end commercial operator from moving forward, but perhaps we'll see more people go ahead and qualify with their GVCs. Who knows? Looking again in the chat, Flying Bot says self-built FPV drones will never have a C rating and steer the future of the DJI Autel drones, etc. We need to keep legacy forever. Yeah, it's an interesting one with the FPV builds, because of course sub 250 FPV builds will have that exemption, and of course there is the Article 16 authorization, although there are obviously, you have to join somebody and there are therefore financial costs to being able to do that, and it's only leisure places that you can fly under Article 16. But no, I do have some sympathy from that, certainly. Steve Simons, welcome. So far, that all reads in line with how I feel and how I fly. Great to see that there is a large agreement across the spectrum of operators too. I can't agree with that comment more. And as I was saying, bear in mind from a stakeholder point of view, this is across so many types of operators, so many types of drone pilot and owner, from your recreational flyer with their Mini and Mini 2, all the way through to people who are planning for the future of beyond visual line of sight, you know, the so-called delivery drones, etc., and everything else like that, but certainly the medical supply drones. It's good to see that there was such agreement between those people, 100%. Maltese Falcon, you can fly a Mavic 3 over an open pram now, mate. Well, the Mavic 3 is actually currently a legacy drone, so you actually can't fly that over people at the moment, 100%. And even in fact, when it becomes a C1 drone, you'll have zero separation with no intentional flight over people. But there we go. Excellent. Well, that's it. As I say, let's just go through that last paragraph one final time. So all provisions should be extended indefinitely, and the class marking scheme should be re-evaluated. So we're going to see an indefinite extension if the Department for Transport decide to take this up, which hopefully, as it is from a public consultation through their regulator, hopefully it will certainly form the basis of any changes that they decide to make. Because certainly we need to see some changes, because the entire system that's needed in place for C labels just isn't there, frankly. So I think it's exciting. I'm personally, on a personal level, as a drone flyer myself, I fly as a hobbyist. I have my A2 CFC, I have a GVC. I'm very excited about this on a number of levels, and I think overall, from the feedback that I get from my viewers and from the people that I speak to within the industry, I think this is going to be very, very well received if it goes ahead fully. So I will keep everybody fully informed of what goes on here. And you know, if you're new here, do hit that subscribe button. If you don't mind, of the over 100 people that are currently watching, and I love every single one of you, could you all please hit that like button on the way out as well? But yes, that's it for today. I will catch you next time on Geeksvana. We've got some great videos coming up very soon. Tomorrow we've got a release surrounding something that's actually happening to help beyond visual line of sight drones actually in the UK, which is an exciting step forward. So keep an eye out for that release. It's a recorded one rather than a live. It's obviously very hot because I keep pointing at the camera today. I apologize. Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. See you next time on Geeksvana. Sean out.